Hi. When was a time that a gut instinct probably saved your life? The call that could have gone very wrong. Back when I was in high school and during my early college years, I volunteered as an emergency medical technician. I worked in a small village just outside of New York City. Most nights were routine, but this one stuck with me. We were covering not only our own village, but two nearby towns as well, since their crews were out of service. One of those towns had a pretty rough reputation. Normally, when we get called to scenes, a police officer meets us there first or arrives just ahead of us. That helps a lot because officers can usually get there faster than we can, and it makes things feel a little safer. But that night, things were different. There was a fire in one part of the town and some sort of crime scene in another. Basically, the police department was tied up. No officers were available, and no advanced life support backup either. So it was just me and the driver, riding a basic life support ambulance. That is pretty standard in a lot of places, but it felt different that night. Something in my gut was uneasy. The call was for a 25-year-old male with a facial injury at a private home. Dispatch said he was waiting in the backyard. We pulled up to the address, a large apartment complex with an open field behind it, and drove around back, just like we were told. That is when my driver noticed something strange. The patient was sitting in the dark, way back in the shadows, like he was trying not to be seen. I do not know what it was exactly, but the way he was positioned made me nervous. That feeling hit me hard, and I instinctively flipped on the floodlights on the side of the ambulance to light up the area. As soon as those lights came on, we saw them. 5, maybe 7 men standing there in the dark, each one holding either a baseball bat or a tire iron. They were spaced out in the shadows, and we never saw them until the lights hit them. Without saying a word, my driver slammed it into reverse and peeled out of there. I jumped on the radio and called for immediate help. Turns out those guys had a plan. They were going to jump us, steal whatever drugs they thought were inside the ambulance, and take the whole vehicle for a joyride. What they did not know is that we were running a basic life support unit, which means we do not carry any narcotics. None at all. It was a dumb plan, but it could have ended very badly if we had just walked into that backyard without turning on those lights. To this day, I still think about what would have happened if we had parked, grabbed our bags, and walked over without suspecting a thing. The marsh that almost had us. A few years back, my buddies and I decided to take a guys-only vacation down to Florida. It was the usual escape from the girlfriends type trip, just a bunch of us doing dumb touristy stuff in the Keys. We camped out, went boating, hit the beaches, and did some snorkeling. Pretty chill. After about 5 or 6 days, though, we started getting bored with the same designated snorkeling spots. Too many people, too basic. We wanted something a little more exciting. So one day we grabbed some beers and went exploring, hoping to find a more off-the-grid kind of place to swim. Eventually, we stumbled on this area inside a national park. It was a saltwater marsh, totally quiet, and weirdly peaceful. We walked around for a while until we found this crumbling old tower by the edge of the water. Looked like it used to be some sort of lifeguard lookout or maybe a ranger station. The place was clearly abandoned, rusty steps, broken railing, rotting wood. And yeah, there were no swimming signs everywhere. Not 1 or 2. Everywhere. But we were all a few drinks in and feeling stupidly adventurous. So of course, we decided to jump off the tower into the water. Just guys being idiots. We leapt off a few times, splashed around, laughed it off. No big deal, at least at first. After a while, the guys wanted to stick around and keep swimming deeper into the marsh. You could barely see more than a foot into the water, it was murky and brown, almost oily looking in the light. Something about it just didn't sit right with me. I don't know what it was, but I had this knot in my stomach the whole time. They tried to convince me to stay, saying we'd only explore a little further. And I'll admit, I kind of wanted to. But that feeling didn't go away. So I told them, you guys do what you want, but I'm heading back to the bar strip. I think they didn't want to split up, so after a few minutes they all decided to come with me instead. Fast forward to the end of our trip, we're packing up at the campsite, and we run into a park ranger. Just making small talk, we mentioned we had explored around the marshes and jumped in for a swim. His whole expression changed. He looked at us like we'd lost our minds. Then he asked which part of the marsh we were in. When we pointed it out on a map, he looked horrified. Turns out that exact area is known for saltwater crocodiles, and a lot of them. Apparently it's even a place people come to see them from a safe distance. Sometimes there are sharks there too, but the crocs are the big problem. That whole section is closed off specifically because of how dangerous it is. The water was so cloudy that we'd never have seen anything coming. And there were 11 of us, more than enough to attract attention. If we'd started swimming further out, I honestly don't know how many of us would have made it back to shore. That day sticks with me. It's one of the only times I actually listened to my gut and backed out of something sketchy, and I'm honestly really glad I did. The morning I slept in. It was the final stretch of my last semester in college, and I had this useless technical writing class I couldn't care less about. The kind of course where everything feels like busy work, pointless outlines, mechanical reports, nothing that felt like it mattered. That night, I had a rough draft due. I sat at my desk staring at the screen, completely blank. Total mental block. I kept thinking, why even bother? This assignment's garbage anyway. And then, out of nowhere, I got this overwhelming urge to just skip it. Not just skip the paper, skip class the next morning entirely. I almost never did that. Sure, I'd had moments of meh, I'll wing it later, but this was different. It hit hard, like something in me was yelling to just let it go, stay home, and rest. So I did. Instead of working, I stayed up waiting for the new Sopranos episode to hit the torrent sites, watched it, then crashed late into the night. Next morning, I slept in like a rock. No alarms, no rush to print the draft, no usual walk from the library to class. I didn't think much of it, just figured I'd email some excuse later. Then the texts started coming in. A guy had opened fire that morning on campus. 32 people killed. The route I always took, library, cut through Norris Hall, straight to tech writing, was the exact place where it happened. The exact time I'd be walking in. If I had gone in like normal, I would have been right there. In the middle of it. I can't explain that feeling I had the night before. I'm not a superstitious person. But something told me not to go. In the days after, campus was chaos. Professors scrambled to assign grades, students were shaken to the core, and everything just froze in this surreal kind of silence. And while I was lucky enough not to be physically there, I carried a strange guilt. Survivor's guilt, maybe. Or guilt over how trivial my reason for skipping was. I didn't have a good instinct or a noble reason, I just wanted to watch TV and not deal with my stupid paper. It's haunted me ever since. That weird twist of fate, that small decision, that lazy moment, how it put just enough distance between me and something unimaginable. A gut feeling saved me. This happened when I was 15, walking home alone late one night. Back then, I didn't think much of it, just another evening, and I figured I was safe enough. I was young, naive, and not the kind of person who imagined danger around every corner. I was maybe a few blocks from home when I noticed two men walking toward me on the same side of the road. They were talking to each other, not paying me any attention. No eye contact, no catcalling, no weird body language. Just two guys out walking, it seemed. When I got to the corner of my street, they were about 15 feet away, now across the road from me. On my street, the sidewalk is only on one side, the side they were approaching. That meant I either walked toward them or veered off onto the grass and curb of the sidewalk left side. That's when something inside me dropped. I mean, hard. This awful, heavy, gut-level feeling hit me out of nowhere. I can't explain it, but something screamed, "Don't walk past them." I tried to brush it off, told myself I was overreacting, being silly. Still, I crossed the road early and took the other side of the street. I didn't run, but I picked up my pace. A few seconds later, I looked back. They'd stopped at the corner and were clearly having a quick, tense conversation, heads together, gesturing. My heart was racing now. I turned and walked even faster. I glanced back again, they were crossing the street. Not just walking, they were following me. That's when I stopped caring if I looked paranoid. I ran. Thankfully, I've always been quick, and I lived just a few houses down. I sprinted up my driveway, digging for my keys, hands shaking. I shoved the door open and stepped inside just in time to turn around and see them at the edge of my driveway. They just stood there for a moment, staring. Then, without a word, they turned around and walked away, back the way they came. Maybe they realized I wasn't alone. Maybe they figured a girl that age probably had parents home. I don't know. But I do know I was a few seconds from something that could have gone very, very wrong. And ever since that night, I've never doubted my gut again. A mother's intuition. This didn't happen to me, it happened to my brother, but it's a story I'll never forget. He was born without any issues. Healthy, normal birth, no red flags. He was the third kid, so my parents already knew the drill, nothing out of the ordinary. They brought him home, he cried like a regular newborn, fed normally, slept as expected. Everything seemed fine. But then one night, just a few weeks after he was born, my mom suddenly woke up in the middle of the night. No sound, no noise in the house, just this awful feeling in her chest. She later described it like waking up from a nightmare she couldn't remember. Just fear. Heavy, rising fear with no explanation. Still half asleep, she sat up, trying to make sense of it. But the feeling only got worse, like pure dread, building by the second. That's when her mind jumped to us, her kids. And then it hit her, the baby hadn't made a sound all night. No fussing, no crying. Nothing. That was weird. She got out of bed and went to check on him. When she got to his crib, she realized something was very wrong. He wasn't breathing. She screamed, and my dad jumped out of bed. They grabbed him and rushed to the emergency room as fast as they could. It turns out he had pneumonia, and his airway had closed completely. No coughing, no wheezing, no signs beforehand. Just silence. The doctors saved his life, but the lack of oxygen caused some brain damage. Nothing super severe, but it left a permanent mark. He's smart in many ways, but there are just some things he struggles with, things that don't quite click for him. He turns 22 this year. All because our mom woke up from a bad feeling she couldn't explain. Stuart's MacBook. About a year ago, someone stole my laptop. I used Apple's Find My feature and, surprisingly, managed to track it down to a nearby hotel. Fueled by adrenaline and probably not the best judgment, I was fully ready to walk in and get it back myself. As I was heading there, I happened to pass a cop walking near the hotel. On impulse, I stopped him and explained everything. He didn't brush me off, he actually took it seriously and called in the case officer I'd originally reported the theft to. Within minutes, backup arrived. They went into the hotel and broke into the room where the signal was coming from. The second the door opened, chaos broke loose, 3 guys inside jumped the police. After they got the situation under control, they found a massive bag of cocaine and a whole bunch of cash stashed in the room. Let's just say I was very, very glad I stopped to talk to that cop instead of barging in alone. Now here's the wild part, how I figured out which room to begin with. Turns out the guy who had my laptop had wiped it and renamed it Stuart's MacBook Pro. Originally, it was labeled with my name, something like Adam West's MacBook Pro, but he must have thought changing it would be enough. What he didn't realize is that iCloud still recognizes the device by its serial number, so even if you rename it, you can still see it and track it. So I took that name, Stuart, and walked into the hotel asking if my friend Stuart was staying there. The front desk, without much fuss, gave me a room number. I stepped out to call my dad for advice, and that's when I ran into the officer. I'm honestly so grateful for that moment. I'd called the cops earlier in the case and felt like they didn't do much, so I wasn't really expecting them to be helpful this time either. But I'm glad I swallowed my frustration and asked for help anyway. I went in thinking I'd be dealing with some random low-level thief, maybe someone who picked up the laptop off the street or something. What it looks like actually happened is that one of this guy's customers probably sold it to him. No idea if he even knew it was stolen. But yeah, that little act of asking for help possibly saved my life. The clock and the fall. This happened in September of 2000. I had just turned 5, born September 8, 1995, and I got into kindergarten early that year. I was a second grade level reader already, so the school made an exception as long as my parents homeschooled me. Around that time, I got an early birthday gift from my parents, a little digital clock of my own. I was obsessed with learning to tell time, and this thing made me feel like a grown-up. It glowed blue numbers and sat proudly in my bedroom upstairs. Anyway, one afternoon, my mom had to step across the street for just a minute to help our elderly neighbor. Before she left, she strapped my baby brother, about 5 months old then, into his high chair and told me she'd be gone 5 minutes. I nodded and went back to playing. Maybe a minute or two later, I heard a loud crash. My heart sank. First thought? My new clock fell and broke. I bolted toward the stairs to go check on it. But something didn't feel right. I paused and peeked toward the kitchen instead. That image is burned into my memory. My baby brother had somehow rocked his high chair back until it tipped over, and it landed on a low railing that separated the kitchen from the sunken family room below. The whole thing was teetering. 1 more inch and it would have gone over. He would have fallen backward, chair and all, straight down the drop. I didn't think. I just moved. I ran over and threw myself under the chair. My little 5-year-old body stopped it from slipping further, but I couldn't lift it. I was wedged between the chair and the edge, holding all the weight with my back, just screaming at the top of my lungs, hoping my mom could hear me. She did. She came sprinting back and yanked the chair off me. My brother was shaken but okay. I had a sore back, but nothing serious. And then, just like that, my brother looked around and said his very first word. Later, when I was older and could really understand what happened that day, it hit me hard. If I hadn't looked in the kitchen when I did, if I had gone upstairs to check on my clock instead, my brother could have been seriously injured, or worse. I still have that digital clock to this day. It's old and kind of ugly now, but it means the world to me. Because it reminds me that I was exactly where I needed to be, right when it mattered most. The man with no teeth. This happened about 9 years ago on the Florida Turnpike. My car's engine gave out while I was on my way to a family event, so I pulled over and called AAA. I was just sitting there waiting when this old guy in a beat-up, unmarked pickup truck pulled up behind me. Right away, something felt off. The dude had maybe 3 teeth in his whole mouth, and the rest of his face was mostly just nostrils. The kind of guy who makes your stomach knot up before he even says a word. He walked up to my window and motioned for me to roll it down. I didn't. I kept it up and locked the doors, cracked it just enough to speak, and told him AAA was on their way. He smiled, if you can call it that, and said AAA wasn't coming. Claimed he was sent instead. Then he asked me to pop the hood so he could take a look. Against my better judgment, I did, but only while redialing AAA on speaker, working through their robotic menu with one hand while watching him from inside the car. A few seconds later he was back at my window, saying something about blue stuff all over the engine. He told me to come out and take a look. I didn't budge. I just kept saying thanks but no thanks, told him AAA was sending someone else, and wished him a good day, while silently freaking out and trying not to show it. My hands were shaking. My voice was cracking. I genuinely thought I might be in serious danger. He lingered there a bit longer, then finally left. A few minutes later, the real AAA truck pulled up. The driver got out, glanced at me, and the first thing he said was, "Whoa, you're hot." Great. New guy, same fear. I almost climbed back into the car. But then I stepped out and checked the engine for myself. Nothing blew. No spill, no leak, not a single trace of anything. totally clean. That man had lied. I still get chills when I think about it. I can still see his face in the window, those pale gums and empty mouth grinning like he already knew how I'd die. I'm just glad he was wrong.